Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's BAInsights session. And today we're talking about stakeholder analysis and stakeholder identification. And I'm very pleased to be joined by three distinguished guests in the BA world and BA community to join me for this session today. So thank you, everybody. Let's start, first of all, with some introductions. And if we can, perhaps Harry, start with yourself, please, if we may.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Harry Madusha. I've been practicing business analysis for about 17 years. I've worked in the various domains, education, sales and distribution, but I currently work in the government of Canada, where I manage a set of business analysts and project managers delivering AI solutions. So I'm quite excited to be here, and I'm ready to share my own point of view of the topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry. And Jay, same question to you for your introduction, please.
Sure. First of all, thank you, John, for this opportunity. This is a very good initiative, sharing insights to the BA community or sharing our experiences to BA community. So my name is Jayakishor. I live in Bangalore, India. So I've been in this IT industry for past 20 years. So I started my career as a business analyst. Its role per se is not actually a business analyst, but I was like the person who was responsible for collecting requirements for various web initiatives during that time 20 years back. So I would call it as a business analyst job itself. So from past 20 years, I've been doing this business analysis, and over a period of time, I have also mastered product expertise in Microsoft Dynamics CRM as a consultant. I've been functional consultant for all the modules of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform area. And also as time progressed, I have done project management, delivery management, and currently heading Microsoft Dynamics 365 pre-sales global leader position in my current company. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay, for the introduction. And last but not least, Gillian.
It's interesting to hear from other people where they are, and actually some of the areas of expertise, actually. So that's part of what's quite nice about being here. So I am practice lead currently at Emergn. So I look after a team of circa 80 analysts. It kind of fluctuates a little bit. I've been in IT 20-something years. Yeah, I was actually just kind of adding up actually when Harry and the guys are going, how long? And I was going, So yeah, I've kind of worked through the various kind of iterations analysis and was in at the kind of start of Agile, which I really, really love actually. And I've typically done financial services and insurance, the odd little foray into government. Yeah, I guess I'm just constantly curious about analysis and things that come and go in fashion and different approaches. So that's me.
Thank you, Gillian. And I think, it's some points you made there were sort of really interesting in terms of thinking about different domains that we end up covering and meeting different people and learn about business analysis. So I'm sure this session, like those that have come before it, will be interesting from those perspectives and more. That's for sure. But as we're here to talk about stakeholder analysis, stakeholder identification and analysis, I wonder, Harry, can we start with you, please, on the question of really what is stakeholder identification and analysis, and why is it important, please? And you're just on mute, Harry.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So from my perspective, I believe that stakeholder analysis or stakeholder identification is one of the most critical things you should do, not just at the beginning of your project, but throughout the life cycle of a project. So without the stakeholders, there's no project. So identifying the right people with the needs, because if you don't know the right needs and you provide a solution, you might be providing a wrong solution to the problem. So trying to figure out who exactly has the problem, or anybody that perceives that they have an interest or his take in that project is critical. So Stakeholder analysis, stakeholder identification is the most critical for my part, the most critical part of doing any project. Another thing is that if you want a comprehensive solution that is not one-sided towards a set of stakeholders, for instance, you are delivering a solution that is going to serve multiple departments. You want to have a view of what everybody that would be affected, what they think about that particular solution. So if you want a comprehensive solution, it is critical to identify every stakeholder that believes they will be impacted, that has the problem, or that are going to benefit from that solution. Another thing is that having a good stakeholder identification and management helps you for collaboration. At the end of the day, you want to carry people along. You want to collaborate. And when I'm talking about, I've been talking about the business, but what about the testers? What about the technical folks? What about the implementation SMEs, which are the technical guys that will implement the solution? What about the domain SMEs? All these are critical stakeholders. And if you go through the BABOK, the Business Analysis Book of Knowledge, you will find a comprehensive list of stakeholders. But I will say that the list of stakeholders are way beyond what is written in the BABOK. So you need to ask questions. Talk to your project manager, talk to the domain SMEs. Is there anybody that I'm missing out? But that's just what I think stakeholder identification is and the importance and why it is important to business analysis work.
Brilliant. Thank you, Harry. You touched on a point there which we'll cover as well shortly in terms of how to conduct the stakeholder identification, but a really thorough answer there, so thank you. I wonder, Jay, building on the excellent answer that Harry's given, would you mind providing a perspective?
Yeah, sure. So in addition to whatever Harry said, right, I would also like to add one more point on stakeholder management and importance of stakeholder management. So in essence, what I believe is that stakeholder management is all about understanding your stakeholders, right? As Harry said, it is understanding their needs, understanding their pain points, problems, and you are giving that comprehensive solution. But there are various aspects to it. One is understanding their problem and giving a solution to them. The second aspect is that human interaction aspect, right? We are humans, obviously, in this era of AI, right? Robots, we are not robots, basically. So we have to have conversation with the stakeholders, the people who will be impacted with the implementation of that particular project, and to make that happen, right? What needs to happen is that rapport building. As a business analyst, you need to one need to build that rapport. So that is one of the critical interpersonal skill, I would say, a business analyst required. So when you understand as a stakeholder, who is he, what is his power, what is his influence, how that person works, how that the person can responds to your queries or questions, right? So you will get to know a kind of a sense. You may not be able to understand 100% about that particular person, but you'll have a kind of a particular kind of a judgment or a understanding of that particular person, whether this person will be helpful for me. Can I build that required rapport with this particular person? So when you have that the required rapport with the rapport with the all of if not all, some of the stakeholders, the sailing through the project becomes very, very easy. You can seek any support from them to any solutions. Rather than getting into a escalation mode, complaining to your project management office or something like that. So that is why, as a BA, he needs to do that stakeholder analysis, stakeholder identification, then analysis, and in addition to provide the solution to understand those people as well. And I would say this would be the one of the primary aspect of a stakeholder management why stakeholder management or is important for a BA.
Thank you, Jay. And yeah, it's a really good point there, because we're not just meeting stakeholders and then moving on. We're actually starting relationships and building relationships and building that rapport, as you said. So yeah, really,
that's
really
right.
good point there. Thank you very much. And Gillian, your perspective, please.
I think the rapport is a really kind of major piece, actually, to follow on from. I think stakeholder analysis is a little bit like building the perfect party, because you need to have the right blend of guests and the right kind of interactions to actually successfully deliver. I think one thing I learned quite early on is when you're brought into a project and someone confidently tells you who your stakeholders are, you definitely do your own analysis and you definitely go and find them yourself. And also it's about looking back at history to try and make things better. So I've worked in heavily regulated environments, and quite often people don't necessarily want to involve compliance or legal because, they're going to put big chunks of text on a screen or whatever. Or we won't talk to security just yet, and then the whole project kind of gets derailed. Whereas we actually identify those stakeholders and we manage to secure them as part of the sprint teams. And actually getting them collaborating with UX, and then actually going to user testing and hearing customers really meant we actually sped through. We never got the blocks at the end of the projects that some of the other teams are experiencing. And I think looking for those stakeholders you may not want to have at the party, maybe because you perceive they might be difficult, but being really far-reaching with them is really important, because you do, I think as well, Harry, you touched on it as well, you've got to have all the right people involved, because no one wants to be late to the party. There's immediate resentment. They're not necessarily going to be quite as helpful, or they might have that massive piece of information that would have maybe made you look at the project in a different way. So I think really getting to know who are your stakeholders and not thinking around the obvious is really key. And often when people tell me someone's not a stakeholder, I'll go and talk to that person immediately, because I want to understand why they're not a stakeholder. Not that I've got trust issues, but like Harry's laughing, you've had the same.
I think, yeah, I would definitely agree, because and I think thinking of it as a party is quite a nice way of thinking about it, because certainly, if it is a party, you're going to go up and speak to everybody if you can, understand, who they are, why they're there, and like a party, sometimes you're going to have people that are going to be coming and going as well throughout the event. It's important to, I think this definitely goes back to a point Harry was making, in that we don't think about it as a one-time activity. It's happening all the way through the transformation, the project, the engagement we're working on, and beyond in most cases, so that we're open to appreciating new stakeholders being identified for us, or meeting them ourselves. And yeah, to the point you made there, Gillian, that just because someone's presented as a possible stakeholder, going and speaking to them and understanding, who they are, understanding their interests, their level of expected engagement, what they might provide or get out of the engagement as well, is all very key. And I like the way that a few of you have also recognised that when we talk about stakeholders, we're not just talking about the business stakeholders, we are talking about everybody who is either involved or invested or is impacted by the analysis or the wider product that we're building as well. I think on top of all that excellent stuff that you provide, I think the only thing really that I would add on that as well is that having this list of stakeholders gives us a good view then of not only who we're going to start to engage with and why, but actually it's naturally causing us to think about different perspectives that we need to apply to a situation or to a piece of analysis. So therefore, we've identified the people, we're halfway there, so let's bring them together and ask for them to provide their perspective, if we would. Now, I wonder, the next question that immediately appeals to me is really how to approach stakeholder identification, stakeholder management and analysis. And I wonder in this case, Jay, could I start with you, please, for that first question, for that question?
Sure, no problem. So basically, I 100% agree with the Harry, when he said, stakeholder management is not only should happen in the beginning of the project, but it's a continuous process, throughout the life cycle of the project. I mean, that's 100% correct, and I agree with that thought. So at the outset of a new project, right? When a new project starts, when you're don't know anyone in that particular organization, right? So there are various approaches a business analyst can take. So anyways, when you are onboarded into a project, you have a basic contacts, or you have a basic the people in the organization whom you already know. Probably previously you would have worked with them to close this deal before this project started, or someone from the account team from your organization introduced you to them and PMO. So some maybe a project sponsor or his or her team, etc. So normally those would be the those are the, I mean, those people are actually your, starting point. One point I would like to say that, it's like, as a business analyst, identifying, stakeholders is like, finalizing a movie cast. Okay, movie, cast, whom you want to be, whom you want to be in this particular role. I mean, it's not directly that way, but I want, for example, if a project has a multiple modules, for this module, let's say in a CRM project, right? I mean, let's say sales management module, you have a, lead management, opportunity management, and order management. So, in a broader, in a bigger organization, for lead management itself, you have a separate set of people. Opportunity and order management, there are separate set of people, and they may not have an in-depth process of all the processes within that particular within that entire process of lead to order management, right? So you need to understand whom you want for what. So basically, before you approach these people, you as a business analyst, I would finalize all the modules which that are going to be implemented as part of this particular module. And all those modules, for each of this module, I would seek some contacts, or the people whom I can talk to with that particular initial set of contacts I have. And then I have a initial set of contacts now. I have I will also need a kind of organizational chat, organizational chart, basically, where I can understand who is who from a reporting standpoint, what he does, what is his role, everything information provided. And now, for each of these small modules, I will have a quick kickoff meetings with those stakeholders to understand, their view about the project, and to convey them how their contribution can impact this particular project, and how it can make their life easy. I mean, if we do the project in a right way. So that way, with that conversations, we will be able to understand, whom we can actually, help, who can actually help me to get the right information, to get the right, the problem. Then as a business analyst, we can, provide the solution. So this is how I identify the set of business the set of stakeholders, and then I can see over a period of time, and who is needed, who is actually contributing, all those stuff.
So
and
it's
then
quite a
next,
practical way of doing that, Jay, in that you're thinking there about, even before you necessarily meet all the stakeholders, you've been given the brief. I mean, you've been talking about like system or functional components.
Yeah.
So having a view of who you might need to interact with for those components. And I guess similarly for someone who might be working on like more business focused analysis, they might think about the processes or the type of stakeholder they need to interact with, be it business or technology. Having that list and that view, they can then, through their sponsors or through the people that are originally there when you land, as you said, we can start to grow that list of stakeholders. So it feels like some quite practical guidance there. I wonder, Gillian, perhaps if you wouldn't mind sharing your perspective on that, please.
It was interesting actually, because obviously we've been mentioning project quite a lot, but I think most of us work maybe more in a product world now. So I guess how I'd approach stakeholder analysis will also vary between something that's greenfield, something's already established. So I think if I go into something that's already established and retrospectives have been happening, actually somewhere I might look first is at retrospectives and try and identify any themes coming from those, because that can sometimes show you where a stakeholder's been missed, or help you identify maybe that difficult stakeholder that you need to keep an eye on or maybe make friends with quickly. So I think the way we work nowadays, I sound old, that kind of drives your approach to kind of identifying those stakeholders. I think another thing that I would do is, if we are working at looking at a customer journey, is not just thinking of that core customer, because we should be customer centric, but who are those other customers? So if I'm collecting a piece of data, why am I collecting it? Who's going to use it? What's going to happen to it downstream? Again, legal compliance, you can tell them burnt, but they've become my best friends actually. They are other people to kind of bring in. So I think you gave a very in-depth answer, so there's not an awful lot more to add on, but I do think it is around looking at that kind of product landscape, and also understanding where your part of the relationship building is fitting in. I think that landscape and those lines are a little bit more blurry now. And again, your stakeholder could be your product owner, and understanding how much that product owner wants you to be managing some of the other people. I hate hierarchies, whereas there's a block to who you talk to, but sometimes you do very much have to respect that initially before you can kind of get around it. But I do think things like retrospectives, and they're gold. There's so much in there you can kind of go, oh, okay, that happened, I wonder why. Our developers have been having this problem, so what can I do for them as my stakeholder to make their life better? How can we collaborate better? So I think that's probably my main piece, is I try and start drawing from those different sources. Just even look at, if it's an existing product, what does it do? Why are we doing this next piece of kind of enhancement, and trying to then use that to kind of look for another stakeholder that might be out there. So,
and it's a really interesting perspective on it, because if we think then about like who our stakeholders might have been before, recognizing that we're not always starting from scratch, and we're not landing on projects right from the start. Sometimes or products from the start, it can be at different stages, and therefore, not just when it applies to stakeholder analysis and identification, but more broadly, taking a bit of time to think about what's already in place, what artifacts are there, what structures are there to help us, and making sure we leverage them rather than come in with a view of sweeping things aside and starting from scratch all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's worth always learning a little bit from the past to make that future a little bit better.
Absolutely, yeah. And Harry, your perspective, please.
Yeah, so I really like the angle Jay came from Gillian and yourself. And one thing I do from the onset is just to add to what you said, is I want to look at that project charter. I want to look at that business case, because somehow included there you find some stakeholders. At least I know the sponsor, and at least I know the project manager, I know the product owner. So that gives me some perspective. But in that business case or project charter, I'll still find a couple of people there. Another place is, just moving to what Gillian said and yourself, is, are there artifacts? Are there similar projects that have happened before now? You just might be able to find some set of stakeholders that are critical to the success of this particular project. Having that first meeting and being open by asking that question, is there anyone here that you feel should be part of this project? Is there anyone you feel I should be talking to? Is there anyone you feel that understands this problem better? And the last part I just want to say is that sometimes it's easy to identify the customers and you ignore the end user. Because at the end of the day, the customer is paying, but they might not be interfacing with that problem on an operational level. So you need to talk to the person that is that wears the shoe, the person wearing the hat, doing the day-to-day activity, they know the problem. They know where the pains are. They know where they feel, they understand the problem better. So that's just the last point I want to add. Don't identify the customers and ignore the end users.
I think that's a really powerful point there, Harry. And I think I liked as well the fact that you're emphasising there that you don't have to put reliance on the BA being the only person that identifies all the stakeholders, because everybody you speak to is an opportunity to share with them that you're compiling this view of who the stakeholders are. Hopefully you're sharing that view more broadly, and then it's a good opportunity to encourage those that have access to that list that you've shared to tell us when there are new people to be included, people you've overlooked, or even when someone moves on and they're no longer part of the project or the product or the engagement as well. It certainly takes the onus off the BA continually going around the organisation checking who's interested or who's still around. That's for sure. I think that the couple of points I might add to that really is that the way I typically think about things as well, in addition to what you said, is I will often refer to the business process, and that will give me a guide of perhaps some of the actors involved and stakeholders that I might need to introduce that are either part of the process and may or may not be represented until that point. I think as well, I like to look more broader than just the product and the initiative and the process and the engagement I'm on, but think about within the organisation I find myself in. Are there any centres of excellence or wider practices, that I can connect with and be aware of? Now as somebody who quite often is going into different clients, it's very useful for me to understand, is there already, for example, a business analysis community of practice? Because if there is, they are likely to have even simple things like templates and guidance on some of the tools that might be used, so that I don't have to go and recreate them from scratch. And certainly, and perhaps actually as a result of those interactions with those other bodies, there might be things that I get to share as a result of the project or analysis work that I'm doing as well. But certainly you've covered most things already. So great. I guess we started perhaps sort of now talking about, we've got an approach, we know what stakeholders are. Maybe now we should start thinking about and talking about some techniques to how to manage that information that we're starting to gather. And I wonder, Gillian, could I start with you, please, in terms of what techniques you might use to manage your stakeholder identification and management?
Actually, I think one of the points you just made around other business analysts, I always think they're quite key stakeholders, because especially if you're already going to another organisation, if you're not the most senior person or the most senior analyst, or even just understanding the influence of a particular analyst, because if you don't do it the way they do it, that can really rock the boat or make people form a particular opinion because they've always done it that way, so it's great, and it can quite often be. So you kind of need to, adjust yourself with that. So I think one of the things that I tend to do is I will actually have almost a customer journey map and use that to almost assign personas of stakeholders. And that isn't just the end user customer, but I agree, having a look at the end customer, and that isn't necessarily, I used to work a lot on websites and apps, but as you said, Harry, quite often the stakeholder you're given is the manager of a department. So those org charts as well, so having those customer journey maps, but then using those as almost like a big giant mind map and then having org charts hanging off it. Sometimes then going to something like Excel, almost using it, again, going back to Jay's point earlier, almost like being a salesperson and managing your leads, is having that list of people and, are they an influencer? Are they a detractor? That kind of attitude impact, can you use them to help you engage? If they're a real advocate, great, I need some help. Let's really get them on board. So having that kind of spreadsheet almost of data, being careful what you put in there, obviously. There's all sorts of things like data protection, and also you should never write anything down you're not happy to say to someone's face. Right, let's keep it professional, guys. I think those are all the key ones. There's an awful lot written about things like force field analysis and whatever. But I do think keeping it simple, and sometimes just having that Excel that you can use, you can manipulate the information, you can search for people. I think things like customer journey maps and persona cards, we use them such a lot we should apply those to our internal stakeholders just as much, because then we really get to understand them and what their drivers are and the whys. So I think those are the main things. But I think we're talking about tools, not really entirely sure this is a tool, but I do think the good old-fashioned cup of tea is a massively big tool. You know I've had it before where you're just trying to understand a stakeholder, and either there's a bit of resistance, or just their work environment is just so hectic. Just going, can I buy you a coffee or a tea, or can we have a virtual coffee? And just taking that conversation away, you get to learn so much more. And that again is where those persona cards come in. That's when you can get really useful kind of 2x2s and understanding, where do they really sit. And they'll also give you, I think like Harry mentioned as well, a whole host of other names probably. Analysis is a big detective game. It is a bit like having a big criminal database. Here are my kind of main kind of characters I need to be focusing on. So I think the key one is it's just that good old fashioned list, database, whatever you want to call it. But really using process flows, customer journey maps, use case diagrams. Oh my word, they used to be great, didn't they? And they're making a comeback where you could you just start to see those names. You're like, well, here's all these names, and just walking through a visual, you get much more information about other people. So I think those are the key ones I would usually kind of fall back on.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Jim. Harry, your perspective.
Yeah, the a lot of points that Gillian mentioned that are very critical. For me, one of the ones I use immediately I start identifying stakeholders. I want to create a stakeholder register, where I just throw everybody. As long as someone tells me that you are interested or you are not interested, I just put it there. Someone said this person is interested or is not interested, then I can start doing my analysis. Another critical technique for me is the influence and interest grid. Especially when I'm working with top management, I want to know how much influence they have on that project and how I should increase their interest, because they have power to derail the project. So I really need to be careful. But also the end users, I want to make sure that, yes, I'm carrying them along and all that. So the stakeholder register, interest and influence grid, the cup of tea, like Gillian mentioned, just let's talk. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. And it doesn't always have to be about the projects. I think Jay mentioned it, build a rapport. Let's just go for a cup of coffee, lunch, because when people are free in talking to you, then it's easier for them to express their pain points. It's easier for you to carry them along. But if they are stiff towards you, then they won't give you all the information. If they feel your project is going to make them lose their job, then they will not help you. They're not going to help you. So the stakeholder register, the interest and influence grid are two tools that have helped me. Lastly, if you use the interest and influence grid, please do not share that document with anyone. It's your personal document. I've made that mistake of sharing with my boss, and my boss told the business, and the business told the people, and people were like, how would you say my interest is so low? Are you trying to take my job away? So I learned the hard way. Some of these tools are just for your own personal use and your own personal analysis. So you need to be careful how you share those information. And I think Gillian actually did mention that. Thank you.
It's quite interesting, Harry, actually, because I do the complete opposite, actually, of that in terms of keeping it to myself. In that, if, for example, the four of us were talking and I was approaching you as I'm compiling my list of stakeholders, and I tend to use a combined sort of stakeholder list that has a rating element to it as well, which we might come on to. But I also definitely think about the power and influence as well of the stakeholders to some degree. And I openly share my matrix and my spreadsheet with everybody I speak to. And I encourage them to tell me what they would perceive their own levels to be in terms of levels of engagement, of influence, of interest. And I openly encourage them to tell me if that changes in any way. Now, I think the caveats I make to that is when I talk about influence, I don't talk about like the influence over the organization in the day-to-day context. I talk about the influence to make decisions on the topics that we'll be coming together to discuss. So I think by doing that maybe that little bit of legwork as part of some of the introductions that we do, it can mean you can share some of your assets without them being misunderstood, perhaps. But I do understand the point you're making.
But I think there's two versions sometimes. I think what Harry said, I think you might have your own scratchpad version, and then there's probably a version you might share. And you have to ensure that across your stakeholders there's a common language, because some words don't translate well.
Yeah.
So if we say influence and we say you're low influence, people will take massive offense, but that's not quite what we mean, is it?
That's right. Yeah. It's really good point, and it shows that these are, that these are just techniques that we can consider and we can use to a degree, but we've got to adapt and apply them to the right circumstance as well. And ultimately, I mean, I think what I'm hearing as well from just hearing, I know we haven't spoken to you yet, Jay, on this, but just hearing that these are fairly simple techniques, and by keeping things simple and putting the emphasis on like the personal engagement, keeping it open, then really the techniques can support that. It's no good having a very clunky technique that prohibits us from having the interaction with the stakeholders, because we're in front of a very complex spreadsheet instead. But Jay, it'd be interesting to hear your view as well.
Sure. Building on top of what Hari said, right? Personally, my favorite is, I think Harry and Gillian already told. Even I use kind of persona mapping, or process mapping diagram, I would call. So basically, when you have a project charter, or when you have a initial kickoff of the project, right? You have a high level understanding of the project. I mean, let's say a functional flow diagram, or functional diagram of what that process needs to happen, etc. And we know in each of those processes who will be the stakeholders, who are they, all those stuff. So with that, we will be able to get the further information as well. And the second technique I use is also a mind map. When the project starts, right? I mean, it gives kind of the first you will have a project vision, and it will actually branch out with the multiple the initiatives, multiple what you call modules, and in each modules who is the person and who is the what are the functionalities, and it will keep on branching till the entire vision is achieved. So mind map, process mapping diagrams, and up to some extent RACI is also, I mean, RACI matrix, responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. That matrix also kind of helpful, though RACI matrix, in my opinion, help in just sharing the responsibilities of each the person within the project team, but RACI can be the base, or foundation to build further on the the stakeholder analysis, in my opinion. And once this RACI matrix is constructed, or finalized, you will and a project charter is complete, you will know the scope as well. I mean, what is that needs to be built, what is that needs to be part of project, what is not, etc. So with that understanding of the scope, right, you can actually weed out unwanted stakeholders then and there itself. Okay, so for example, if in lead to order process, if some process is out of scope, and the stakeholder related to that particular module, or app, need not be part of your workshops, or your communication, or your the thing. Maybe when that comes back into scope, you can involve him as well, so that way you can optimize your way of the communication, etc. So these are my some of the inputs. I mean, the techniques I use in my work.
I think it's a good introduction there, Joe, of the project charter and the scope as well, because just going to that first meeting with the stakeholder, it's handy and useful to be able to introduce to them what the initiative is, so give them the context of why you're talking to them. So if you've got some clearly defined scope or an overview of the project or initiative or the product vision, then it's certainly a useful artifact that they can help appreciate why you're there. That's for sure. I wonder, Jay, as well, stick with you in that, because I feel like I didn't quite give you a load of time on that last question compared to perhaps others as we were discussing. I wonder, Jay, if I could ask your opinion really on how we might deal with difficult stakeholders and how you might deal with them. When I say difficult stakeholders, I think we should include within that perhaps those that might be reluctant to engage in the analysis, or perhaps those that may have conflicting views or opinions. So choose which or all of those as you wish.
Yeah. See, this is a very difficult area. Even I have, faced. Sometimes I myself, when clueless, see, the thing is, they have awarded the contract. I mean, in a service and the vendor customer relationship I'm talking about. They have awarded contract to us as service providers to implement this product, this project, and now they are hesitant to give the requirement itself. I mean, it's a kind of a, the strange situation to be in. So as a BA, right? Yes, I mean, you can definitely go and complain to your project manager, and that route is different. But as a BA, I would need to take some of the calls and some responsibility to understand. I mean, I would call it the empathetic approach. So basically, so the listen to them, why they are actually hesitant or reluctant to participate. So I would somehow get a one-on-one call with them, with that particular stakeholder. For example, if it is a one stakeholder, and I will understand, I will listen. So see, the thing is, the value of this project, if once implemented, is this. So this is how your life is going to change, once this project is implemented. At least that is the vision. We are working towards that particular vision to change that life. So what is that stopping to involve, to give us or help us in the the requirement, because your contributions are immense, and it is required, and it will be recognized once this project becomes success. Because as a BA, I will be here to understand your problem and implement, and but ultimately it is going to be your baby. I mean, you are going to benefit it from. So I mean, these are some of the the talking points I would do with them. And what I have seen most of the times is, these reluctant stakeholders are reluctant to provide any support is due to political reasons. And also, there are many other, aspects. I mean, they may not know they may not know the right requirement by, themselves, right? So those are the the areas then I can uncover once I interact with that particular stakeholder. Then accordingly, I can take action, to get the right stakeholder to get the right information for my problem. I mean, if that is the case. If it is due to the political reasons, as a business analyst, I won't be able to do anything. So, and that needs to be communicated to the management, and management needs to be involved in such matters as well. So the empathetic listening and is one of the key areas where you can actually build that rapport with that stakeholder, and you can really understand that person, why he's doing that. And I mean, that is one of the powerful ways I would tackle with the real painful stakeholders. And the
I guess
second aspect,
I guess
yeah.
like say just demonstrating that empathy is is really at the heart of, I think, what you're saying there, and putting yourself in the shoes of that stakeholder as well
Yeah,
will
correct.
definitely help. Yeah,
Yes.
I would agree. And Gillian, would you mind sharing your view?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the type of difficult. I guess I've seen a few different flavors of it. I think people who are reluctant to engage, I think you're right. You need to be able to understand the reason for the reluctance. And most of the time, I would always try and address it myself before having to kind of go above or kind of around, because I think you're going to have to work with these people for a long time. So you need to be able to resolve those issues and gain trust. And I think, trust and respect are something you have to earn. So I think you have to act with integrity and talk to people and understand if you've said it's confidential, you keep it confidential. I think one of the other ones I found is over contributors, and that can be actually more senior people, kind of a hippo kind of thing. And then you find other people don't contribute. And with them, it can be awkward, but I think it is that conversation, and just make it very factual. It's kind of like, do you do this day to day? Are you an actual customer? Are you representative of the demographic? And just explain to them that actually sometimes their presence and their behaviours will mean we'll miss requirements, and actually they're risking the success of the project. Again, the cup of tea. I think that can cure an awful lot of things. I think just having that kind of conversation.
Imagine in that case, that particularly the cup of tea there, that if you're in those environments where perhaps there's a workshop or a meeting and somebody's not being particularly vocal, it's a chance to go and have a cup of tea with that individual on a one-to-one, understand, what their input would have been, because some people they don't feel comfortable in voicing their perspective when there's a larger amount in the room. So as a BA, we could take that to one side, learn about the individual, understand the perspective they would have liked to have shared perhaps, but maybe didn't feel comfortable in doing so. And then we can be that voice. We can share it in the next meeting, and actually, that will help build that trust and that rapport, as it were.
I think with workshops as well, if you can be strong enough as well, you do gain an awful lot of trust and respect. I mean, I know I used to run quite big workshops. There was one particular hippo, and actually I just called the meeting and said, great, everyone for a cup of tea. And then just said, oh, not you, which in a way is quite aggressive facilitation, but it was a clear teacher child. And it's like, they're all being good. They can go, we need to talk. But obviously it wasn't an aggressive conversation, but it's just sometimes you have to balance the dynamic if you can try and do it in a way that's not going to cause too much offense. But yeah, non-contributors, I mean, it can be they're worried about the job. It can be all sorts of things. So I think emotional intelligence is really key to managing and developing stakeholder relationships and handling difficult situations. And you can't refer to someone else all the time. That's a key thing. As you move up as being an analyst, the difference between a level 1 and a level 5 or whatever is how they handle conflict and how they handle, those situation scenarios, how well they can read a room, how well they can go, okay, I've got enough requirement to safely move forward. This is something we can ignore, or this is risking the project. It needs to be nipped in the bud. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I sometimes observe conflict, and potentially there's a chance that conflict exists because of my understanding or lack of understanding of different perspectives. So what I like to do is, rather than, like, say, for example, I was separately speaking to Jay and separately speaking to Harry, if it felt like they were having conflicting views, then I generally take the view that that's probably my understanding rather than they actually are conflicting. So it's quite a nice place to start the conversation, and then bring the two together with me, so we can just get to the bottom of, really, is it an understanding issue, or what is their true perspective? And I think perhaps starting in that sort of manner is a nice way to sort of diffuse some conflict from the start. Doesn't always work, but
the Columbo approach.
Is that what it's called?
Well, that's what I've always named. It's the one where you either you go back and you ask a question when they think you finished to catch them out, or you just act a little bit less sure, and it encourages other people to then, they don't feel threatened, so it's more likely to resolve it, isn't it? So.
That's it. Yeah, I like the term. I definitely all the things you were saying, apart from the Columbo bit, resonated, but at least now I've got a term for it.
Yeah.
And Harry, your view, please.
Yeah, I like Gillian, I like your tricks.
I
But it's
sound like a
good that
bad
they
person,
work.
don't I?
No, no, no. But they work. They work. That's the important thing. And they are simple, but they actually are very effective. The only thing I would think I would add is just perspective. So my perspective is when I start a work or I'm working and someone seems difficult or someone tells me this person is difficult, I kind of view that it's really not, I don't see that in, I try not to see it in a negative perspective.
Mm.
Sometimes it's passion, sometimes it's pain, you know. For instance, I had a situation where I had supposedly difficult stakeholder who every project he has passed through IT, none had been delivered. So he was disgruntled, he was unhappy. It's easy to just say, oh, this guy is difficult, let's say, but I knew that there's a reason for that being difficult. There's a reason for that behavior. So I had to have coffee or lunch. This case, it was lunch with him, and we just talked. He was quite hostile. Anytime I come into the floor, he was like, what are you doing here? IT is a mess. I'm talking to my boss. We're going to find another IT shop and we're going to outsource all our IT projects. You guys are not offering any value. And I sat with him one-on-one. You don't have any personal issues with me. I don't have with you. I am here to help you succeed. That is why I'm here. I come to this floor because I am here to enable you to get value. What is the problem? He gave me a list of about 5 projects. None had been delivered. His KPIs were not met with his boss. So I told him, out of these 5, which is most important, he told me, and I had to go to the PMO office. What is going on? What is going on? It's over a year. And he told me the PM assigned to that department had resigned. They're having a resource constraint. And I volunteered. I'll manage the project. We can't lose this guy because he's a major stakeholder. We lose this guy. You don't know where we feel the effect later. I did the business analysis and the project management. I won this guy over. We delivered the project. The next strategy meeting for that department, I was called. The CIO was not called. I was called to the strategy meeting. Why? Because they finally got value. Because they finally saw someone that understood their language. So I think perspective is important. Let's not just see people as being difficult. Why are they difficult? Is there a history? How do I solve that problem? How do I fix this issue? How do I mend this broken relationship? Then for conflicting departments that have conflicting requirements or not agreeing, I usually will call a chat session and everybody will be there. Developers, testers, project managers, sponsors, everybody's there. I will do a walkthrough and try to reconcile the two opposing, not opposing, but people that differ. One person I like to have in that meeting is the sponsor. Just in case I cannot reconcile them, he's the tiebreaker. I'll defer to him. They want this. We've discussed it. I've given my recommendation. Can you please be a consensus voice for us? And usually they will tell us, he or she will say, we are going in this direction. And I also try to get a sign off in that meeting because you leave that meeting without the sign off, everybody goes back. But usually it doesn't get to that. If you bring everybody together and you explain exactly why a requirement should be there or why it shouldn't be there, usually people will understand. So those are just the assumptions. Sorry, it took a little while to say that.
That's right. That's right. That's all valuable stuff. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, so much so. I mean, I think not much more for me to add really on top of that from my perspective. I think really what I've generally observed is that on a lot of occasions the theoretically difficult stakeholder, they tend to be valuable stakeholders in almost all occasions as well, because they might be perceived as difficult because they're voicing challenges or issues or observations. But that's far more beneficial to me than someone who remains silent throughout any engagement. So I'm all for it. And I think I've definitely worked with a number of people that on the face of it have been difficult, not necessarily to me, but to others. But I think through our conduct and through the value that we add in different ways, that could definitely help diffuse some of that hostility that might theoretically be there. And there's a bit of advice I was once given many years ago in terms of difficult stakeholders, and just drown them in kindness. And I think it takes a very special type of stakeholder to remain difficult under those circumstances. And I think if we can remain impartial, think about the value of the organisation, and remain calm and kind to that last point, then I'm sure it'll only help anyone. You know, but I'm certainly conscious of time, and we've certainly covered a lot of aspects, got a lot of deep perspectives on stakeholders, identification, analysis, and management, and those less easy to please stakeholders as well at the end. So I think all that really remains is really just to thank each of you for attending. Thank you for your insights and for sharing. I'll definitely look out for subsequent posts from you. I know you're quite active on LinkedIn as an example, so I'll certainly look out for that. But thank you once again for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you all.
Yeah.
Really good to meet you.
Great meet you. Yeah, thank you.
See you
Bye.